Monster Rancher is one of those series that, fair or not, had to contend with the Pokémon clone tag right from its initial release in 1997. Despite that though, Monster Rancher still grew to become legitimately popular for a period of time between the late 90s and early 2000s. The gameplay gimmicks that defined the series, like letting players create a monster by switching the Monster Game Rancher disc with CDs or DVDs, are some of the most beloved characteristics of these games. And on that note, we thought that we would put together a list of the top 10 best Monster Rancher games that were ever released. But of course, just before we do go into the video, if you do like this type of content and you would like to see some more top 10s, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. And of course, with all that said, let's just get straight into it. These are the top 10 best Monster Rancher games that were ever released. Number 10, Monster Rancher Battle Card Episode 2. This game was another card-themed game for the PlayStation, and at that time, just about every Japanese media property was releasing card games. Although with that aside, this might be a good example of how the series' main hook, monster creation through analog CDs, has shown how it can be transposed to a game that isn't about breeding and instead of monsters, the players get decks. Although the main thing about this, and where the criticism stems, is the uninspired UI and animation. Everything about this game presented is quite bare bones, and as a result, some people see it as a bit of a cash grab for PlayStation. That said, this game does have a very good card mechanic going for it. Number 9, Monster Rancher Battle Card. This game's sparse user interface is a little bit more understandable since it is running on a Game Boy. This game might also contain one of the strangest video game intros anyone will ever experience, in which players are given their starting decks according to a personality test that they had to answer at the beginning. Players are also exposed to a new type of card game, so there is that to learn as well. Number 8, Monster Rancher DS. It's no surprise that the last mainline Monster Rancher game happened to be on the Nintendo DS, which is known for incorporating quirky gimmicks, and in 2010, the iteration of the series sees players using the DS touchpad and or mic to create monsters. Unfortunately though, that's not enough to mask the process behind how randomly generated creatures are made, since one can literally draw or say anything and come up with a creation that looks like a stock monster. Nowadays, this game is often seen as the last gasp of the series before its unofficial hiatus. Number 7, Monster Rancher Advance. Monster Rancher's earlier outings on the handheld typically have proven to be better, though the developers were quite honest at the time, stressing how this release on the Game Boy Advance was a port of the ones released on the PlayStation. Similar to the DS version of Monster Rancher years down the line, writing a 4-letter name for your creation generates you a monster. Monster Rancher has always been a series where fans know exactly what they're going to get, so expect the same for the Game Boy Advance version. 6, Monster Rancher 2. In a gameplay feature that sounds Black Mirror-esque, players can have their monster creation admitted to the hospital and have their bad traits be surgically removed. Ethically questionable procedure aside, it does make for monster training to be a little bit easier. Number 5, Monster Rancher Evo. This PS2 game was supposed to be the clean break for the series, however, and unfortunately, there were a few things going against it. The first thing being that it was released in 2006, which was the year that the gaming industry was preparing for the release of the 7th gen console already. And then on top of that, it subsumed the battling and tournaments into mere plot devices for the ambitious JRPG presentation the game was attempting to pull off. There was promise in the idea, though whether through audience apathy or the inability to cope with producing for a contemporary console, it seemed that this was the right game but just released at the wrong time. Number 4, Monster Rancher 3. As the first PS2 release for the Monster Rancher series, it didn't disappoint the fans who got hooked with the deep training and simulation mechanics of the first 2 games. Taking advantage of the PS2 graphical capabilities, the developers went with a new shaded art style that looks charming enough to hook series newcomers. As far as gameplay goes, it's more of the same, though the polishing makes up for the whatever staleness the series might have been suffering from at that point. Number 3, Monster Rancher 1. The OG Monster Rancher served a need back when it was released on the PlayStation in 1997, predominantly being because every gamer knew that PlayStation needed to have their answer to the Pokémon franchise. Of course, the monster generation via CD hook helped differentiate itself from Pokémon, as well as a less forgiving breeding system where being organized in training was as important as deciding on battle tactics on the fly. For the new gaming audience though, Monster Rancher was a very welcome addition that should be enough to secure the series' legacy. Number 2, Monster Rancher 4. This is to Monster Rancher 3 what Monster Rancher 2 was to Monster Rancher 1, as games that offer significant improvements over their predecessors without undermining what the previous title did. Monster Rancher 4 streamlined everything that was present in Monster Rancher 3, the scheduled monster training, the monster combinations, the schooling, and the ability to customize your monster farm. The opened up exploration element was also a nice touch as well. If there were only one Monster Rancher title that you'd have to play on the PlayStation 2, it would be this one. Number 1, Monster Rancher 2. This is the game that defined Monster Rancher's identity for the rest of its lifespan. As if the breeding system on the first game wasn't complex enough, the developers had to add even more features, like the Errantries, and training sessions where the player has his or her monster, go on quests again to gain experiences and skills, as well as to unlock new areas. Just playing Monster Rancher 2 for a little while, it would be easy to imagine this was a series that could have continued on to the next decade, something like what Digimon did. But as it stands, this has become one of the defining games of the PlayStation Sony era. Whether or not Tecmo will remake some of these games, or release a new Monster Rancher title in the future, that remains to be seen. And so there you pretty much have it. Those were the best Monster Rancher games to have ever been released of all time. So what did you think of this list? Do you agree with this top 10? Or perhaps you think there was a different order that these games should have been placed in? If so, do let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. And of course, not forgetting that if you do like this type of content and you would like to see some more top 10s, be sure to hit that subscribe button and of course, like this video. I'll also leave some more top 10s at the end of this video if you would like to check them out. Thanks very much for watching guys, and I will see you all next time.